Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind roaring around you, the ground beneath your feet crumbling with every passing second. Panic sets in as you realize there's nothing to hold on to, nothing solid, nothing secure. Now, imagine instead that beneath your feet is an immovable rock, firm and unshakable, giving you the strength to stand tall no matter how fierce the storm around you. This is what it means to have God as your rock and refuge. Life is unpredictable. One moment everything seems stable, and the next you're facing a storm you never saw coming. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt try to overwhelm you, making you question whether you'll make it through. But when God is your foundation, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be shaken. You don't have to live in anxiety wondering what tomorrow holds. Because when you build your life on the unshakable truth of who He is, nothing, no storm, no trial, no setback can take you down. So today, I want to invite you into a new way of thinking, a new way of living, where faith replaces fear, where peace silences panic, and where you step into the supernatural strength of God as your rock and refuge. Faith is more than just a belief. It is the foundation upon which everything else in life is built. Imagine standing on solid ground, unshaken by the storms around you. That is what faith in God does for your soul. It creates an inner strength that no external force can shake. The world is filled with uncertainties, trials, and unexpected challenges, yet those who trust in God as their rock stand firm when everything else crumbles. The secret is not just knowing that God is there, but truly understanding what it means for Him to be your foundation. When life becomes unpredictable, most people react out of fear. They scramble for solutions, desperately seeking control over situations that are often beyond their grasp. But those who have placed their trust in God walk through the same storms with peace. They are not blind to reality. They simply see a greater reality beyond the immediate struggle. The foundation of their faith gives them the confidence that no matter what happens, God is still in control. Just as a house built on a firm foundation withstands the force of a storm, so too does a life built on faith endure every trial. God, being your rock, means He is unmovable, unchanging, and always present. Unlike people who may come and go or circumstances that shift like sand, God remains constant. This is why trusting in Him provides a level of security that nothing else in this world can offer. The moment you build your faith on this truth, fear begins to lose its grip on you. Anxiety has no power over a heart that knows it is held by something greater. Worry becomes less dominant because you understand that your life is being guided by divine hands. To fully embrace God as your rock, you must shift your perspective. Many people believe in God, but still live with overwhelming fear and doubt. The problem is not their belief, but their focus. They look more at the waves around them than at the rock beneath them. Like Peter when he walked on water, the moment he shifted his gaze from Jesus to the storm, he began to sink. This is what happens when we fixate on our problems rather than the one who is greater than them. Faith is not denying the existence of challenges. It is choosing to see beyond them. The world teaches us to rely on what we can see, touch, and control, but faith operates differently. It calls us to trust in what we cannot always see. Faith is knowing that even when life feels chaotic, there is a deeper order in place. Even when things do not go as planned, there is a greater plan unfolding. God's promises are not dependent on circumstances. They are eternal. His word does not change based on the shifting winds of life. This is why faith in Him is the most unshakable foundation a person can have. Building your life on God requires intentionality. It means filling your mind with His truth rather than the fears and doubts that try to take root. It means aligning your thoughts with His promises instead of the negativity that often surrounds you. The more you focus on His word, the stronger your foundation becomes. You begin to see yourself differently, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a person of purpose. You walk with confidence, not because life is perfect, but because you trust the one who is perfect. One of the greatest evidences of faith as a foundation is peace in the midst of chaos. It is easy to be at peace when everything is going well, but true faith is revealed when peace remains even in the storm. This peace does not come from ignoring reality, but from knowing that God is greater than any reality you face. It is the kind of peace that surpasses understanding, the kind that does not make sense to the world. People may look at you and wonder how you can be calm in the middle of difficulty, but you know the answer. Your foundation is secure. God is not just a distant figure, he is a personal rock that you can lean on every single day. When doubts try to creep in, you remind yourself of his faithfulness. When fear whispers lies, you speak his truth louder. When challenges arise, you do not panic because you know your footing is firm. This is what it means to have God as your rock, to be anchored, unmovable, and unwavering, no matter what comes your way. Your mind is the gateway to your reality. Everything you experience, joy, fear, love, doubt, originates in the thoughts you allow to take root. The way you perceive the world around you is not determined by your circumstances, but by how your mind interprets them. This is why Scripture teaches us to renew our minds, to take every thought captive and to align our thinking with God's truth. When your mind is filled with doubt, fear, and negativity, your life will reflect that. But when you consciously renew your mind in his presence, a shift happens. You no longer react to life's difficulties with worry. Instead, you move through them with divine confidence. Thoughts are powerful. They shape emotions, influence decisions, and ultimately determine the course of your life. What you think repeatedly, you begin to believe. What you believe, you begin to act upon. And what you act upon creates your reality. If your mind is filled with worry, that worry begins to control your actions. If your mind is filled with faith, that faith begins to shape your reality. This is why renewing the mind is not just a suggestion, it is a necessity. You cannot walk in the fullness of God's promises while holding on to the weight of negative thinking. Many people live in constant mental battles because they have not yet learned how to filter their thoughts through the lens of truth. They allow external circumstances to dictate their inner world. When something goes wrong, they immediately assume the worst. When a challenge arises, their first reaction is fear. This is not because they lack faith, but because their minds have been conditioned by past experiences, societal influences, and the pressures of life. The transformation happens when they make a conscious decision to step into God's presence and renew their thinking. God's presence is not just a place of refuge, it is a place of transformation. When you spend time in his word, when you dwell in worship, and when you meditate on his promises, your mind begins to change. You start to think differently, and as a result, you start to live differently. Instead of seeing problems, you see possibilities. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by life's demands, you feel empowered to overcome them. This is the power of aligning your thoughts with God's truth. Renewing the mind requires discipline. It is not something that happens overnight, but a daily commitment to choosing faith over fear, truth over lies, and peace over chaos. The world constantly bombards you with messages that contradict God's word. It tells you that you are not enough, that your future is uncertain, that your past defines you. But when you step into God's presence and fill your mind with his truth, those lies lose their power. You begin to walk in an identity that is rooted in divine confidence, knowing that you are chosen, loved, and equipped for every challenge you face. One of the most powerful ways to renew your mind is through gratitude. When you shift your focus from what is lacking to what God has already done, your perspective changes. Gratitude is not just an emotion, it is a mindset. It rewires your brain to see life through a lens of abundance rather than scarcity. Instead of dwelling on what is missing, you begin to appreciate what is present. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, you start seeing what is already going right. This shift in mindset creates a new reality where peace and joy become the natural state of your being. Fear and anxiety thrive in an unrenewed mind. They gain power when you give them space to grow. But the moment you replace fear with faith, worry with worship, and doubt with trust, their grip weakens. This is why spending time in God's presence is crucial. It is not about escaping reality, but about aligning yourself with a higher truth. When you are in his presence, your mind is shielded from the noise of the world. You gain clarity, wisdom, and a sense of peace that surpasses understanding. There is a supernatural transformation that occurs when you consistently renew your mind. You no longer feel like a victim of your thoughts. You recognize that you have authority over what you allow into your mind. Negative emotions no longer control you because you have learned to filter them through God's promises. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to trust Him deeper. Every setback becomes a setup for growth. Your entire perspective shifts from surviving to thriving, from fear to faith, from uncertainty to unshakable confidence in the God who holds your future. Life is filled with moments of uncertainty, trials that test the strength of your heart, and seasons where everything seems to be falling apart. In those moments, the human instinct is to search for safety, to find a place where you feel protected, secure, and untouchable. Some people seek refuge in relationships, hoping another person will be their rock. Others turn to financial stability, believing that money will keep them safe from the storms of life. Some distract themselves with entertainment, social media, or temporary pleasures to escape the weight of reality, but eventually every one of these external sources of refuge proves unreliable. People disappoint, money fluctuates, distractions fade, and the problems remain. This is why true refuge can only be found in God. When you run to God, you are not running away from your problems. You are stepping into strength. The world often teaches that faith is a crutch, that relying on God is a sign of weakness. But in reality, trusting in Him is the greatest strength you can ever possess. The strongest people are not those who fight every battle on their own, but those who know where to run when the battle becomes too great. God does not call you to carry the weight of life alone. He invites you to take shelter in Him, to release your burdens into His hands, and to stand under the covering of His protection. Refuge is not just a place you visit when things get difficult. It is a mindset, a way of living. When you know that God is your refuge, you carry that awareness everywhere you go. You walk through life with a confidence that is unshaken by circumstances. You no longer react in fear when challenges arise because you know you are covered. Just as a fortress shields those within its walls from enemy attacks, God's presence surrounds you, keeping you safe from the things that threaten to break you. One of the greatest examples of God as a refuge is found in the lives of those who have faced immense trials yet remained unshaken. Think of Daniel in the lion's den. He did not panic or try to fight his way out. He rested in the presence of God, knowing that he was protected. Think of David, who faced enemies on every side, yet declared, "The Lord is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." This was not just poetic language for him, it was a lived reality. He had seen God rescue him time and time again, and his confidence was unshakable. The key to making God your refuge is trust. Many people say they trust God, but still live in fear, worry, and anxiety. True trust is demonstrated in how you respond to difficulty. Do you collapse under pressure, or do you stand firm knowing that God is your defender? Do you panic when the unexpected happens, or do you take a deep breath and remind yourself that you are under divine protection? The way you respond in times of trouble reveals where your refuge truly is. God's refuge is not only about protection from external troubles, it is also about inner peace. The world is filled with noise, voices telling you who you should be, what you should fear, and why you should worry. But when you step into God's presence, that noise fades. You find clarity, wisdom, and a sense of peace that cannot be explained. Even when life does not make sense, even when the answers are not immediately clear, you can rest knowing that you are covered. There is a supernatural shift that happens when you embrace God as your refuge. Fear no longer controls you. Stress no longer dictates your mood. You begin to carry an unshakable peace, not because life is perfect, but because you know that no matter what happens, you are safe in His hands. Others may wonder how you remain so calm in the face of trials, but you know the secret. You are not standing on your own strength. You are standing in the shelter of the Almighty. Running to God as your refuge does not mean you will never face challenges. It means that when challenges come, they will not consume you. The enemy may try to shake you, but he cannot break you. Life may throw storms your way, but they cannot uproot you. No weapon formed against you will prosper because you are hidden under the wings of a God who never fails. This is the confidence that comes with knowing that God is not just a distant figure in the sky. He is your fortress, your shelter, and your unwavering protector in every season of life. Faith is the key that unlocks the supernatural. The moment you truly believe that God is your rock, you step beyond human limitations and into divine possibilities. Most people live confined within the boundaries of their natural senses, believing only in what they can see, touch, and control. They allow circumstances to dictate their faith instead of allowing their faith to dictate their circumstances. But when you fully trust in God, you shift from a life bound by earthly restrictions to a life empowered by His presence. Faith is not just a concept, it is a force that activates miracles, opens doors, and aligns you with the supernatural. Every great move of God begins with faith. The Bible is filled with stories of ordinary people who walked in extraordinary power simply because they believed. Peter walked on water not because of his ability, but because his faith allowed him to step into the supernatural. The moment he doubted, he began to sink. This is the reality of faith. When you focus on God, you defy the impossible. When you focus on fear, you fall into limitation. The supernatural is not reserved for a select few. It is available to anyone who dares to trust God completely. Many people pray for miracles, but continue to live with a mindset that blocks them from receiving. They ask for breakthroughs while holding on to doubt. They desire God's intervention, yet live as if they are still bound by their problems. Faith requires alignment, not just in words, but in thought, action, and expectation. If you believe that God is your provider, you do not live in a constant state of worry. If you believe He is your healer, you do not speak sickness over your life. Faith requires stepping into a reality before it manifests in the natural. God never intended for His children to live ordinary lives. He created you with the power to shape your world through faith. Jesus said that even faith, the size of a mustard seed, can move mountains. This means that the supernatural is not dependent on how much you have. It is dependent on how willing you are to activate it. Too often, people wait for the right conditions before believing, but faith operates in the unseen. You do not need to see the entire path before you take the first step. You move, and then God moves. You speak, and then things begin to shift. Trusting in God as your rock means you do not rely on human logic alone. Logic has its place, but faith goes beyond what makes sense. The natural mind says, I will believe it when I see it. Faith says, I believe it, therefore I will see it. This is why the supernatural operates in the realm of trust. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea, they had no logical way forward. But God made a way where there was no way because they walked in faith. This is the power of trusting in something greater than yourself. Faith is an invitation to partner with God. He has already declared His promises over your life, but it is your faith that pulls them from the unseen into reality. Many people live beneath their potential because they hesitate to step into what God has already prepared for them. They let fear dictate their decisions instead of stepping boldly into their calling. But faith does not wait for the perfect conditions. It moves forward, knowing that God has already gone ahead and made the way clear. There is no limit to what God can do through a person who fully trusts in Him. The supernatural is not about striving, but about surrender. It is not about forcing things to happen, but about aligning yourself with God's divine flow. You stop trying to control every outcome and instead trust in His timing. You open yourself up to breakthroughs beyond anything you could have imagined. The same God who multiplied the loaves and fishes, who raised the dead, and who spoke the universe into existence is the same God who lives in you. When you walk in this awareness, fear loses its grip, doubt fades, and you begin to operate in a realm where the impossible becomes possible. The greatest breakthroughs happen when you let go of human limitations and embrace divine possibilities. It is not about being perfect or having everything figured out. It's about having a heart that fully trusts. Faith is the bridge between where you are and where God is calling you to be. When you step onto that bridge, the supernatural becomes your reality, and you walk with the assurance that nothing is impossible for the one who believes.